Yonder, and we're standing in front of historic Allegan Lodge that was built in 1907 and it was completed in 1909. So we'll take you inside and tell you a little bit about our ghost story here. I've been a paranormal researcher for 20 years now, and so I've really encountered a lot of different active, what we call paranormally active locations. And it was my interest in paranormal investigation that first brought me here. The building has a reputation, a well-known reputation for being very haunted. Everybody in town will tell you when you ask them about the building that it is haunted. And 7 years ago when I first came here, I was able to speak with people who worked here and ask them about their experiences. And I was very surprised that pretty much everybody I talked to here, even if they weren't big believers, had stories about the lodge. After it was the hospital, it became the Allegan Lodge, and it operated as the Elks Lodge until a couple of years ago when it was purchased by someone locally. Well, as a lot of paranormal researchers and investigators will tell you, that there seem to be some locations that are just more active than others because of what took place in those locations. Hospitals, museums, battlefields, and a lot of times the Elks and a lot of those types of lodges will be active. And I think that given its history, being a hospital, there were a lot of people that came and went, and there was a lot of suffering, a lot of joy, a lot of pain, and a lot of just different emotions that have kind of imprinted themselves here. And I would ordinarily think that maybe it was residual, and I think that there is some of that goes on here, but I think that there are a lot of active entities that are here as well. One of the first stories that I heard about the lodge, I think it was the first time I actually came here, was told to me by one of the lady Elks that happened to be there that day. And she heard us talking about ghosts and people's stories of what had happened in the building. And she was watching us with some interest, and so I said, well, how do you feel? You've been here a lot. Do you think that this building could be haunted? And she said, well, actually, I do have a story of something that happened. I was here getting ready for a dinner that night that the Elks were putting on, and she said I was here with my granddaughter. And I just let her play. She was 3 years old, and her grandmother let her run through the building and play while they prepared for the dinner. And when it was time to go, she called her and said, okay, let's go, it's time to go. And they walked out the front door and out to the parking lot, which is down below us here. And when she got out to the car, she noticed that her daughter wasn't beside her, and she was looking at the building and looking up here at the slider up on the second story, and she was waving. And her grandmother said, honey, what are you doing? She said, oh, I'm just waving goodbye to the little girl. And she said, what little girl? She said, the one that was playing with me. And so a lot of people, it wasn't just this one instance, have seen a little girl standing here in the second story window.
My name is Jody Haney, and I joined Michigan Paranormal Encounters 2 years ago, I think, and we're standing in the ballroom of the Allegan Lodge. I've had lots of great experiences in here, personal and also lots of evidence caught on tape that I'd love to share with you.
Do you feel that the Allegan Lodge is haunted?
I do, and I'm pretty much a skeptic, and I'm not a believer until I've tried to exhaust every possible explanation that there is. And some of the experiences that I had here would lead me to believe that there is a lot of activity here, because I've tried to disprove it all.
And what methods have you used to try and capture some evidence of paranormal activity here?
I've used my video camera, my regular camera. I've used dowsing rods to communicate, and also digital voice recorders.
Okay, and could you just tell us about a couple of your experiences here?
Yes, some of the best EVPs that I've ever captured in my few years of doing this have been here in this ballroom and the kitchen that's behind me there. I was here with a group one night, and we all heard a man's voice with our ears that was just in the room with us, which was kind of exciting because most of the time you hear it on tape later when you're reviewing the evidence, but that was all heard with our ears. Once I had a digital recorder going in this room, and for about 20 minutes there was nobody even on this floor, and we got 20 minutes worth of little voices and things being moved around, and nobody was anywhere close. I've gotten an EVP of a woman humming in this room. We've heard voices and footsteps in that back kitchen, as well as cabinets and doors being closed long after they had been removed from that room. Another great EVP, when Kathy was here doing a tour, we were here doing a tour, and Kathy had been upstairs, right. And I had said something about Kathy. I had mentioned Kathy's name to the people who were on the tour with me. And upon reviewing that evidence, there was a voice that came through that said, "She's been here all week." And it was kind of funny because she had been here all week doing some work and helping out the owner with some renovations. So that was definitely a sign that somebody had been paying attention.
Do you find that there are different types of activity on the different floors of the building?
I think so. I have never seen anything up here in the ballroom area, but I've captured lots of EVPs up here. In one of our dowsing rod, or several of our dowsing rod sessions, we've communicated with children, played games with them, asking them, who should we throw the ball to next, and then the rods will point to people, which has been pretty exciting. Downstairs, we've seen some light anomalies that were hard to explain, and again, I try to explain away everything and couldn't explain those away. We saw beams of light coming out of the floor. We saw light anomalies passing in between people, so that was kind of exciting. And then we also witnessed that in the fireplace room as well. And then in the basement, there's the creepy room, as we like to call it, and there's a lot of physical sensations that you get down there, that feeling of unease and of being watched, and several EVPs have been captured in the basement as well.
As paranormal investigators, we find that one of the most useful things that we can do when we are investigating a location is to do our research on it and to do a background check and a history, because the more information we get from that, the better we are able to understand the things that are happening here in the building. And it seemed that for so long the hospital had such a good reputation. It was a charitable institution. People just couldn't say enough good about it. And then something changed, and people in the community weren't as supportive. And it just seemed like such a turnaround. And in talking to people in town here, some of the old-timers that had a personal knowledge of what happened back then, was that they said things started to change here when the hospital was sold to a doctor from Chicago. And this would have been in the 1920s when Prohibition was kind of in its heyday. And in Michigan, there was a lot of rum running and smuggling of whiskey between Canada and Michigan. And people believe that there, at this time, it was like the mob influence, the organized crime influence came to play here. And there are many people who believe that the doctor who purchased the hospital, which he changed immediately from a charitable institution to a for-profit hospital, it just began to get a bad reputation. People talked about black cars pulling up and offloading bodies and people at 3 in the morning when the hospital wouldn't normally do business. And I remember asking someone, why wouldn't they just say something if they thought there was something illegal going on? And that was where the whispers of organized crime came into it, that people knew what was going on, but you just didn't talk about it. And so that seemed to be one of the things historically that happened that changed things. There are stories and rumors about people being interrogated in the basement. It is a particularly active area of the building, and I think the energy down there is probably more negative than anywhere else in the building. People believe that there might even be a couple of bodies buried down there because there are just some irregular spots in the concrete that have been filled in.
Well, thank you for sharing our little story with us. There's so much that we don't have time to tell you about this building. It's just amazing, and it definitely has a personality of its own. We also do know of another place here in Allegan that has a very haunted reputation. If you're interested, please let us know. Allegan itself has quite a reputation for being haunted. If you have any questions, let us know, and thanks for joining us.